I've talked about quite a few PC handhelds in my day on this channel, and there have been some very unique ones. The ones that comes to mind the most frequently when it comes to a unique PC handheld is the Lenovo Legion Go. Out of all the PC handhelds out there, it is, I would say, the most unique device. And in the background, there's been one company that has been here since the very beginning and actually has predated pretty much all these other PC handheld manufacturers in terms of making small, portable PCs. And that's GPD. They've been in this game for probably the longest out of anybody that I've talked about. And not necessarily in just making computers, but specifically making these little portable computers. And that all started with the original GPD devices. And those were amazing devices. And we've reached a point where those devices can actually game amazingly. Now we're on the GPD-4, the newest device that GPD has announced and should be shipping in early January. Do you guys remember, by the way, when I first mentioned the new AMD chips for Strix Point and how those devices are going to be coming late this year, early next year? Well, I called it. The iNeo 3 and this have been some of the first devices, alongside that 1X player device, that is coming with the Ryzen AI HX 370 processor or the AI9 365 processor, different core counts and different CU amounts for their compute units. So it's affecting the amount of performance this thing could put out for gaming, but we'll get into that later. This is just the beginning. I can't wait for the handhelds to come out next year. They're going to be so amazing. The characteristic that defines the GPD line, the standard baseline device, is that it's typically a traditional laptop style device, very much akin to a netbook of days gone by. But these aren't your granddaddy's netbooks, these are pretty powerful machines. Alongside that, it also packs some very interesting features like a KVM, which I won't pretend to know how functional that is for the average Joe, but for me, I don't see myself ever using that part of it. It seems unnecessary unless you're doing like some serious work and you're not buying this for gaming then. So if you're here, how'd you end up here? You sound like a real professional. How the hell did you get here? Aside from that, let's jump right into the specs. It has an 8.8-inch 2560 by 1600 WQXGA display, effectively like an IPS type display. It's a touchscreen. It can flip into a tablet mode, which is pretty nice. When it comes to processors, you have your choice between the Ryzen AI9 HX 370 or the AI9 365, or you can use last generation's Ryzen 7 8840U, found predominantly in a bunch of the PC handhelds out there, in basically being akin to the Z1 Extreme found in the Legion Go and the RG Ally and whatnot. But what matters most to us is gaming. And for the most powerful gaming CPU you want is probably going to be the AI HX 370. And that comes with the Radeon 890M, which we have talked about before, being akin to a desktop 1650 when it comes to graphical performance. And that's decent enough for you to use some upscaling technology to really play some AAA titles decently well. This is primarily a discussion video, so I don't actually have one of these on hand, but relying on information collected from plenty of sources out there, the Fox was able to get the new Warhammer game to run pretty decently on this device, going from the native resolution with FSR for upscaling purposes and at the 28-watt power performance mode, getting around 45 FPS, and the game looked amazing. For the 890M variant, it's going to be very similar to the 780M because that one is kneecapped by having 12 compute units, the same amount found in the 780M on the 8840U version, but you will still notice a performance increase in comparison to that version. It's just going to be mostly architectural improvements, not necessarily raw horsepower improvements. Still though, that's like an extra 10-15% extra performance, so it's kind of hard to complain about that. For RAM capacities, you can get up to 16, 32, or 64 gigabytes of memory, all clocked at 75 megatransfers per second in dual channel. It comes with one dual-sided NVMe 2280 SSD, which can be upgraded, and you can get it in 1 or 2 terabyte capacities. It is PCI Express 4.0 by 4, so it is fastest darn SSD you could probably have out there, except if you wanted to get like a PCI Express 5.0 SSD, but those cost a pretty penny. And while yes, it's going to be a lot faster, I don't necessarily see any benefits from gaming, especially because most developers aim for what the consoles are in terms of their hardware. And those, while yes, admittedly, really fast SSDs are nowhere near the speeds of what we can currently achieve on PC. So it's probably going to be fine if you used even a PCI Express 3.0 SSD in this, if you just had one lying around and you just want to increase the amount of storage you had. So you're probably going to be fine regardless of what you use. It has Wi-Fi 6E. I would have liked to see Wi-Fi 7 on this device personally, especially with how much this thing costs. But it's not the end of the world for not having Wi-Fi 7. It just would have been really nice to have. It has Bluetooth 5.3. It has an HDMI 2.1 port. It has USB 4, 40 gigabit. It has 2 Type A's, one at Gen 2 speeds, 10 gigabit, and one at 2.0 speeds, 480 megabits per second. It has the expansion module, basically that KVM stuff, and you can switch it in for a 4G LTE modem. You can get a single port KVM module. You can even get a RS-232 module. I'm not entirely sure what it is. It looks like a VGA or serial port. It seems unnecessary unless you're working in IT. And of course, it has a micro SD card slot. This is a pretty impeccable device. And you can even see in the footage above, people actually use, those telescoping controllers usually found on phones and stuff like that on this to give it proper physical controls, because this device isn't necessarily made for gaming. It's like taking a gun to a sword fight. It's a little overpowered and unnecessary for what you're trying to do. Essentially taking a sledgehammer to just a nail to mount a painting. Like, it is just so much more than what you realistically need, unless you're the kind of person that really likes something like the Legion Go. I think this can make a very compelling case of being like your primary laptop device, and when you're at home, you can flip it into tablet mode, slide your controller onto it, and boom, now you got an 8.8-inch 1440p essentially gaming device. I could see a lot of people finding that very attractive. If you get one of these devices for yourself, I would recommend going to 32 gigabytes of memory. I feel like that would be a pretty safe spot to be, so you can allocate a full 8 gigs to the 890M to get the physically most amount of power you can out of this thing by giving this thing a dedicated 8 gigabytes of VRAM. That's basically how the RGLI X is able to do what it does, is by having more dedicated, faster memory for the graphics. I can definitely imagine this being an incredibly compelling device, but for me, 8.8 inches is a really big device for gaming, and especially if you're expected to hold it up while you're playing it. It just seems to be more at home being a small little laptop guy, not necessarily being a dedicated handheld gaming device. If you love GPD and the things that they do, I would honestly wait for the GPD Win 5, because that would genuinely be probably a much better overall gaming experience for you than you would have on this device. This is clearly more designed for IT and professional environments where you need a really powerful computer, but you do not have a ton of space to work with. But there is a small subsection of people on the internet who will buy this thing for gaming, and if you do that, this will be an amazing experience. Though you've got to be prepared for the compromises that this kind of device comes with, not being necessarily purpose-built for gaming. I'd say tentatively keep your eye on this thing, especially when this thing fully releases in January and starts shipping. I would love to hear what you guys think about this down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.